a certain level of automation, okay, in engineering applications. Okay, so I go through with introduction, the key concepts, procedure-wise, how to apply this technology, and finally with a summary on as to the benefits of this technology. Okay, the first thing is group technology is not new, all right? Although the name sounds, but the concept is even before you come across this term, this name. Actually, everybody in our daily life as human beings actually we apply this in our daily life. Things like decision making or make some reasoning judgment. For example, I give you one of the examples. And everybody let's say in Singapore, if you see the cloudy, okay, if you look at the sky, it's cloudy. Not exactly every day the cloud and day are the same, but normally you will predict it might be raining and you bring it up. But the result is not necessarily all the time you're right? So, but that's something like a pattern. Similarities. Cloud day will lead to rain. Something like that. Okay. So group technology is something like one important way of applying reasoning is so-called related similar things. And if you look at these, I wouldn't say this is the third generation or second generation of mobile phones, right? Okay. Certainly not the current generation and not the future. All these mobile phones, they're from, different brands, okay, but they belong to the same generation. And the first thing appear in your mind whenever you look at this, like 30 to 40 of those different models. And the first thing appear in your mind would be, they are similar things, right? Similar things with the similar functionalities, right? You expect these things, each of those phones would have something like you can call, you can receive call, you can make call, and you can text. And maybe you can send attachment to photos or not. I'm not quite sure. I can't remember entirely the functionality of this. And they could have radios. They could have other things. But the major functionality of these phones are similar because they belong to the same generation. They have similar things, but not entirely exactly the same. Okay, so. The reasoning logic we try, principle we try to use is similar things, similar characteristics, similar problems, similar solutions. So that is the concept, that is the philosophy, okay, behind this group technology. And the application, what we can see that application is before we're talking about engineering or manufacturing application, in other fields like information storing and retrieval. If you go to the library, you look at the books, the physical library, the books, and they all have a code, right? And for those belonging to engineering, they use the same code of the first two digits. And belonging to ECE, belonging to mechanical engineering or whatever, and maybe the subsequent few. Only for more details, only the last few might be different. Okay, so it's being used for that purpose as well. But this concept or this kind of decision-making philosophy or methodology, it's been there. It's a natural right. It's a natural thing, belonging to human beings. But as an automation technology, especially applied to manufacturing or production industry, it was not very recently, but still recent things, which means GT, or group technology, was formally established as a automation technology, was done in 1958, okay? There was a Russian engineer, that's his name. He wrote a book, so-called The Scientific Principles of Group Technology. So basically, ever since then, engineers will try to apply this consciously, okay, consciously, not unconsciously, right? Unconsciously to many other things, but consciously we actually apply it to engineering field or to production, automation, that kind of application. Okay, this is another example, okay, similarity, okay? This example is quite different from this, because in this example, this group of products, they look similar. So we will call this a similar. But this, based on their appearance, they not look similar at all, actually. Or even the functionalities are not the same. But their similarity depends on what are the attributes you defined, what they are similar. For example, for the previous example, the cell phones, mobile phones, the similarity based on appearance, based on functionality. So if we use these two sets of attributes, certainly this not similar. But if we define that there is a key component used in these products, they all use lens, and then they are similar, right? So similarity also, although to our mind naturally is the appearance or functionalities, but we have to be aware that really depends on the attributes you used for similarity, and that's more important, okay? So come back to this concept of this as automation technology. So it was given a formal definition, and the general means not necessarily to production domains. Is the realization many problems are similar, and that by grouping similar problems, a single solution can be found to a set of problems, thus saving time and effort. So the idea is you must have a so-called history solving, a set of problems, and those problems being solved. You have a large number of problems being solved, either engineering or whatever. And then what you do is, among those solved problems, and plus a solution, and then you have to group them into different so-called families. And for each family, the members belonging to that family would normally have similar solutions. And then what you do, for each such family, you produce a standard solution to cover the needs of all its members. For example, now you have, from the history, you identify five families. Each family would contain several dozens of members or several hundreds of members. And you give a standard, a single solution to each family. And that's the first step. The second step is, whenever you encounter a new problem, the first thing is you check which family this new problem belongs to. If you can find a match, and then you can retrieve the standard solution. So basically, it's by that one. That's the way how it works. And of course, this is also some sort of automation. You may ask the question whether the standard solution will fit 100% to the new problem. Most likely not. But make modifications would be much easier than starting from scratch. So that's the idea. If we apply this GT, group technology, to parts production, and there is a more narrowed definition. First thing is, what are the major engineering tasks in parts manufacturing? Parts manufacturing, which means we refer to workshops with machine tools. You're going to produce parts, right? And if you work in the traditional or classic factory or parts manufacturing industry, and basically there are two major kind of jobs, traditionally, okay? And now, of course, there's a bit more. The first one is you conduct design. You design components, you design parts. And you start from scratch, from the concept design until you finish the detailed design, analysis, and eventually you produce the models, the drawings, and and plus CAD models nowadays, right? That's the first type. Second type, we call it planning engineers. Planning. All right, you got the finished product specs, the models. As an engineer, you need, before you dispatch this job to the shop floor, you have to work out a list of the so-called instructions, machine instructions. First step, second step, third step, on which machine to remove what kind of material, or use what kind of cutter. We call this type of job process planning. So mainly there are these two, and plus nowadays, of course, there are high-level planning tasks to decide if you have more than one job ongoing, you have new jobs, you have existing jobs, which order to dispatch in the new jobs. We call this production planning. And of course, nowadays, especially in Singapore, in those manufacturing industry, there are those maintenance, production lines in maintenance. There's a lot of jobs for you to handle, all right? But traditionally, mainly these are the two major tasks, design and also process planning. So GT in this field is defined as a manufacturing so-called philosophy in which similar parts, the objects that we're dealing with are parts or components, similar things. Similar parts are identified and grouped together into a part family. Remember this name. Okay. So parts are similar. Again, similarity based on which attributes you refer to, you define, right? So similar parts are put together, and then we take advantage of this similarity to try to save time. Either you do design job or you do planning job. Not necessarily, ideally it would be both, but not necessarily always true. Probably you have to make so-called a choice. Okay? Either design or manufacturing, we're talking about fabrication steps. Okay. Example of part family. So inside a single part family, parts are so-called similar, either because the design attributes are similar or because the fabrication processes are similar. In this example, something close to 40 or 50 spur gears. They are all different, but we call them similar. The reason is they're similar in design, and they're similar also in terms of the fabrication process used for this group, for this family of so-called gears. So this group of spur gears belonging to a part family, we call them a design part family as well as manufacturing part family. Okay, ideal situation, right? Well, once you identify a part family, that's the first major step. How to do that later we'll show the procedures. But once you have established a part family, all right, you can, if you have a design part family, of course, then you can apply it to achieve a certain level of automation in new part design. How to do that? A new design can be created by simply modifying an existing part design from the same part family. For example, for the previous example, if you want to design a new spur gear, you may not find among the 50 spur gears you have in that family exactly the same, which means you can't use any existing design. But you can certainly choose the one closely. Excuse me. Sorry, I should turn this off. So you find one most close to the one in your mind you want to design, and you just retrieve it and make modifications. And by doing that, we still call that, a certain level of automation. You can save time and effort. In part manufacturing, if we identify a part family, we call it a manufacturing part family, which means the members share similar fabrication steps or similar fabrication processes. So what you can do, what you can do is parts in this part family, in the same family, can be combined into a so-called machine cell. You know that in the production system, the layout of the machine is later. We'll see some specific examples. And in semiconductors, which is highly automated, you see the flow lines. Okay, semiconductors actually, for different kind of products, actually they go through exactly the same set of machine tools in sequence. So production control is very easy, efficiency is very high. And but if you go to some kind of like mold making, injection mold making kind of workshop, you see the machines are not in this kind of lines. The reason is the jobs they receive, the parts they need to produce, in terms of the processes, are very randomized. Okay. So what they do is they normally put all the machine tools, all the same type and the same room, the same type and the same room. And you go through this type, the process is not like so much flow. And we call this kind of layout, we call it job shop type. It's a job shop. Okay? And efficiency normally, very high versatility, but efficiency is low. But by doing that, if you can find in a factory, you find a parts manufacturing family, and for each part family, if you can put the machine tools belonging to that family under the same roof, different machine tools, and eventually for a new job to come in, and most likely this job can be finished under the same roof. You don't need to travel around with working, transport required. Anyway, and also for process planning, we can also apply this philosophy later. Okay. So, in applying, if you want to apply this GT philosophy or technology to achieve automation in either design or manufacturing or both, identifying part families, that's always the first major step. Without that, you can't take advantage of it. The definition of part family is a collection of parts that are similar either because of the geometric shape or because of similar processing steps. So for the first category, with a similar geometric shape, we call them design attributes, right? Design part family. If they have similar so-called processing steps, we call them manufacturing part family. Right? And there is a note we need to be aware of. The parts within the same family, either design or manufacturing family, they are actually still different. They are not the same. But their similarity is close enough to merit their identification as a manual part family. We take advantage of similarity, not exactly the same. Not exactly the same. Types of part family certainly already mentioned. Is a summary. It could be design, it could be manufacturing, it could be both. For that part, I'll show you two simple examples of part family. And the sample size, first thing, is very small. Okay? Here, the first part family, we only have 2 members. These 2 members. 2 shafts, rotational parts, and these 2 actually, if you look at the drawings of these 2, and these are technological specs, okay, underneath all the texts. And these 2 parts with exact the same dimension, same geometry, okay, exactly the same, nominal dimension, geometry, everything the same. So these 2 certainly belong to identical shape and size. Okay. They belong to the design part family. But what about the manufacturing steps for these 2? You need to study details regarding the technological specs. The first part one actually, the main difference, of course, material, the last one material different, but apart from that, the two major differences are, one is production volume. The first one is, the left one is 100,000 per year, which can be called mass production already. Production rate is very high. Second one, only 100. 100 is a size like very small. Okay. And, okay, these difference, production volume, the huge difference will make impact on the machine tools you're supposed to use. And for the first one, on the left, actually, if it's 100,000 per year, you may consider to buy some so-called automatic machine lathe machines, automatic lathe machines, which have very good, very high production rate. The automation achieved is by hardware, but the flexibility of those machines is limited, unlike the general purpose lathe. All the lathe machines you have seen in our workshop, training workshop, the lathe actually, are those general purpose lathe. So for the left side, in order to achieve this kind of production volume that you probably need to invest by the automatic lathe. But for the right side one, 100 per year general purpose lathe, definitely not worth to invest to buy an automatic lathe. So basically, the machine tools used for this tool could be different already, first thing. Second thing, if you look at the tolerance, okay, the dimensional tolerance of this tool, for the left side one is plus minus 0.015 inches. But the left side one, the right side one is much more tighter. It's plus minus 0.001. And what's the impact? Okay, what's the impact of this? As a process planner, you know that if you look at, of course we can't memorize those things, okay? But if you look at the machine list handbook, you will find that for each particular machine tool, there is a region of, this is a certain tolerance, dimension tolerance, achievable, so-called achievable tolerance. There will be zoom. And for this, plus minus 0.015 lathe can achieve this. If you use a very small depth cut, you can achieve very high accuracy. Okay, easily you can achieve this. Probably more than that. But certainly not this one, 0.001. 0.001, even you use a very small cut, depth cut, very fine cut, on the general purpose lathe, you can't do that. You can't achieve that. That's close to like a miracle. Very good. So most likely, the rough or intermediate machining stage, you've done it, you will do this actually on the machine, on the lathe. And then you move this one to a grinding machine. Okay? To achieve this kind of accuracy, you need to use cylindrical grinding machine to achieve. So up to this point, machine tools, even for lathe, could be different. This one does not need further fine machining. This one does. So in terms of the manufacturing process requirement, these two are quite different, right? So similarity in design attributes does not lead to similarity in manufacturing attributes. Not necessarily. Sometimes yes, but sometimes it's not. Okay? So these two only belong to a so-called design part family. The other example is here, next page. We've got 13 parts. Okay, we've got 13 parts, and all these 13 parts actually, the raw piece before machining is done on those parts are casting parts. You see all these kind of parts. You just can't start with a piece of raw material and then you remove this material to achieve this kind of things. And the machining requirement for all these parts. Normally there are two areas you need to do for those casting parts. First one is top surface and bottom surface. For example, for this. Top surface and bottom surface. They appear flat after casting, but they are pretty rough. So normally you need to face mill. You need to mill the top, mill the bottom. And these two faces, actually, flat faces, are going to be used for assembly purpose. This is the first for all of them. Second one are those, if you look at the central holes, okay, some with the not central holes, non-central holes, some with the little ones, but all of them have a central hole. And this central hole also pre-existing after casting. But again, the surface is pretty rough. So what you need to do for all of this part, for the central hole, you need to enlarge it. At the same time, to improve the finish, dimension accuracy, and also the surface finish. So for those 13 parts, in terms of the manufacturing processes requirements, they all need face milling, and they all need hole enlarging process. You could, for hole enlarging, you could use different kind of processes, like boring on the lathe, or you can do profile milling as well. Okay. And on the other hand, and these are the manufacturing attributes. So certainly they belong to a manufacturing part family. But moving back, do they belong to a design part family? Well, certainly not. The geometries of all these parts are very much different. Okay. So we have a conclusion here is, okay, the conclusion is parts with very much different design attributes. They may belong to the same manufacturing part family. So these two examples actually is quite in contrast. The first one is very much the same geometry, parts with the same geometry having different processes requirements. Parts with quite different design attributes, for the second example, needing similar manufacturing steps. So we need to be very much careful. As I mentioned, similarity not necessarily depends on looks, okay, geometry. Okay. It really depends on what are the attributes you want them as for the similarity. Okay. So if you're talking about, okay, based on design attributes, these, no, they're not part of the same family. But based on manufacturing attributes, yes. The first one, the first two components, the last one, based on design attributes, yes. Based on manufacturing attributes, no. Okay. So we need to be aware of this. So then we comes to this. Okay. So the key concept is part family. So whatever you do, you need to identify part family. All right. You need to first define the attributes you are concerned with, you are interested with, for so-called for similarity. And second task now comes the left side. And these parts are those in production history. Okay, the things I want to emphasize is, whenever you want to apply group technology, normally you need the factory to have a certain production history. And without this so-called archive of parts produced before, you can't say identify the part family. You can't imagine, what are those parts you're going to produce. So basically, you need to have a 5 to 10 years like production history already. So you actually accumulate a quite large number of parts, and for each part produced, I'm talking about this, in the production history, it has 2 sets of information in the archive or in the library. The first set is the design, drawing or model, CAD models. They are there. That's the first so-called first set of information. The second one is a process plan, the instructions to produce this. And this process plan has been executed already, implemented already, because the parts already been delivered, produced and delivered. So for each part, you have 2 sets of information. So first thing is you're going to dig out from library or archive, whatever, the parts you have design, process plan, drawing process plan, or model process plan. So you end up with the random parts. You have large number of random parts. And these are the boxes. On the right side, this is like the result, the part families. Eventually, we want to, from the left side, to achieve the right side. We have different categories. You identify, okay, these belong to, in this example, actually, it's more like a design part family because they all look quite similar. So basically, this is the final results. But the thing is how to find that, okay? It's the conversion between the left side to the right side. Okay. So identifying part family is a very important task. It's probably the most important task for applying this group technology. And in the history, especially since the 1970s, 1980s, there comes a few so-called important methods which can be used to identify part families. The first one is not among the major ones, okay, but we can mention this. Like what we did to the two examples, to the two identical shafts and the 13 parts. We actually, what we use visual inspection, right? Manually. Okay. But certainly manually, if you handle a very small sample size, then it's fine, up to several dozen. But if you think about it, you have several hundreds or a few thousands, and then this visual inspection, no way. Okay. So that comes. Two other methods. The first method is called classification and coding, but basically it's a coding method. Okay. The idea is quite straightforward. If you have a coding system, all right, and then for all the parts come in, because you have two sets of information, and depending on what the attributes you use for the coding, for each code, every component could have a code, and then you can do this manually or whatever. Okay, so eventually you could end up with several hundreds codes or a few thousand codes representing all the parts. So you end up with a digital representation of the part design and manufacturing attributes. Okay, to replace the original, because the drawings. Okay, it's not computer readable, or even the process plans is not computer readable. Okay, process plans is written in text, in lines 1, 2, 3, 4, readable by the operators to follow. Okay, so initially all the forms actually regarding a particular part is not computer readable. By using this basically a coding system, you can actually convert this particular part, design and manufacturing attributes into a code. So eventually what you do, once you have this several thousand code, and one very simple way to identify part family is for parts sharing the same code. Okay, different part could share this. Later we'll see, okay? When you code a part, a component, all right, you normally, a code cannot cover 100% of information on the design. There's no way. For example, for our students, we could have codes, okay? The first code, the first digit could be male or female, so 100% information because you use a binary would do, right? You only have two alternatives. Second one, height. Well, height, if you round it up to centimeters, you could have an accurate representation, right? Because from 150 to 190, you only have 40 different kind of alternatives, right? You could have. But let's talk about weight. If you're talking about up to grams, then how many you need to have in order to cover the 100% information? 2 many. So basically, a code eventually will not cover 100%. That's why only those, as long as the parts are similar in the attributes you use, if they share the same code, then they can be put into part family. So that's the idea, but we'll see some details later. So the key is how to define the attributes. So it depends. Again, it depends on what your application is. And that is the key. Once you have the coding system, the rest actually is quite straightforward. Okay. So most likely, in our current applications, a coding system is very widely used. And the information for a part, for a component, actually, most of the information used are from the design information, design attributes. Okay. And the second major method is this production flow analysis. This analysis simply identifying manufacturing part families. The first one could be go for design, mainly for design, but also can go for manufacturing part family. But this one purely on manufacturing part family. For this method, the information we start with, okay, do not contain the design information, which means the drawing or CAD model ignored. It simply make use of the process planes for each part, for all the parts. So eventually, parts sharing similar steps of processes will be grouped into a part family. Okay. And let's take a mini break, come back at 1, and we'll start looking at the coding system.